And a lot of people don't know, but the term AI was actually coined in the 40s, right? And it's been around for a long time. It went through some AI winters where nothing was developed, but more recently, it's become front and center. And people are careful because there's a lot of risk in using AI, especially when it comes to what we call SEO, or search engine marketing. When you're putting stuff on your website, say in a blog or just on your web page or in your content, if it's not valuable to your audience, the algorithms are going to hurt you. I think one of the best phrases I ever heard is just saying, hey, wanted to ask you a quick question to see if it makes sense, right? Open up like that. Because humans by nature want to help people. And then by saying that and then having a question, would it make sense for us to have a conversation about, hopefully you're going to get a reply to something like that. I think it all comes down to the phrase, make them better. What in them I use is in company, the individual. What is it that you or your product or service can do to help them?
Hey everybody, Chris Del Torrio, New Velocity. Really excited to have a marketing guru with us, a digital marketing infotainer is what his website says, as well as a solution whisperer. Also the author of ABCs of the Customer Journey, Hank Hoffmeier. Hank, so awesome to have you here today.
It's so great to be in a conversation with you and talking about all things, whether it's personal or marketing and sales related. It's just great to be here.
Yeah, normally when I do these things, the guest comes on, we talk for like 3 minutes and we just start right away. Hank and I are like, all right, we got to start this thing or we'll be BSing forever. And Hank, we first met back when you were with Eye Contact, and your skill set, it's in a lot of ways very different than mine. And I really appreciate people that have a different skill set than me. But then we started talking, there are a lot more similarities. They're just hidden sometimes. So you're still with Eye Contact, but they have a brand that I think they bought, you said maybe 4 or 5 years ago, Kickbox. So pretty cool. Tell me a little bit about Kickbox.
Right. Our parent company is Ziff Davis, and they own a lot of different brands. You may know some of them: Men's Health Magazine, PC Magazine, and others. You can always go to the website and learn. But I've been with the brand Eye Contact for 13 years. It was acquired 3 times, more recently by Ziff Davis, or most recently, I guess. And they brought on board Kickbox, which is an email verification service, helps people make sure that they have the correct emails to send to people and make sure it gets to the inbox, which is awesome. I call myself a jack of all trade, master of a few. And that's because I'm very technical. I can do technical aspects of any kind of job, a little bit of programming, some scripting, as well as technical support. But yet I'm social. I'm here on a podcast. I can get on a stage and talk to audiences about marketing, about sales. I've owned my own small business. I've done a lot of things that give me a bunch of different lenses to look through things as far as challenges and successes when it comes to either starting a business, running a business, or maybe, larger businesses, running teams, departments, and increasing their goals, increasing revenues is probably what I would say. And that's why a lot of people come to me for my thoughts and possibly advice. So, maybe I don't always have the best advice, but I have a lot of knowledge.
Yeah, that was actually well said. I didn't put it that way as much when a lot of my employees, when they start, I have several copies of your book, The ABCs of the Customer Journey. And I just think it's really important that we always look at things through the lens of our customers. And I've noticed, especially millennials, sometimes they don't do that as much. They certainly have other skills that I wish I had. So I'm not picking on millennials. I might do that later. But they want to know why this, why that. And I think you do a really nice job of kind of answering the why there. Hey, I'm going to move on. I can't wait to ask you the first question. But just because of Kickbox in our audience, some people are doing this on their own as part of another company. You've got a code that they can use and actually try out Kickbox if they want the first 500 or whatever it is free, right? At some point, they're going to ask for code HMBT. Is that right?
It is. When you sign up, you do get 100 credits automatically, but I want to give 500 credits. If you're a small business and let's say you have 400 email subscribers on a list that you haven't emailed in a little while, but you did get permission to email them, very important, you can upload them and verify those email addresses. And if you're a larger organization, it'll give you an opportunity to use our API to check email addresses in real time. If you have a developer or you are a developer, you can integrate it into your form. In other words, some of us may have went to a website and misspelled Gmail. We put in hank@gmail.com with an N. It will say that email is invalid. Please try again. That is our technology behind that. And it allows larger corporations to correct email addresses before they're invalid.
Love it. Well, I hope people try it out. It'll be great. So some questions that I couldn't wait to ask you. And the first one, this is obviously the hot button. I was playing golf last month, and my father-in-law is a member guest, and we came in last, by the way, down in Florida. And we got paired up with this older gentleman, and he's talking about he buys stocks, and there's a big disruption going on in the industry. And the number one thing, and he's buying stocks around this, and he was calling them A1 stocks. And I said, well, what do you mean by A1, like grade A1? He goes, well, A1. He goes, you don't know of A1? I'm like, well, no, tell me. I'm like, this is some 85-year-old guy. What's he talking about? Well, he's talking about AI. He goes, well, I call it A1. I'm like, well, it stands for artificial intelligence, right? He's just like, oh, like, kind of hit him. So kind of interesting. Hey, I hope I'm still playing golf at 85. I don't care if I get things called,
Right.
artificial intelligence a steak sauce. But talk to me about artificial intelligence. A little bit of sales spin. We'll probably have a follow-up question, but AI and marketing, what's going on?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked because I'm actually running a circuit now. I recently spoke in Dallas, in Vegas, and then next week, actually, I'm flying to New York to speak about AI and email marketing. And a lot of people don't know, but the term AI was actually coined in the 40s, right? And it's been around for a long time. It went through some AI winters where nothing was developed, but more recently, it's become front and center. And people are, number one, afraid it's going to take their job. And then number two, they think that it can help their business. Then there's the in-betweens. There's people that are hesitant in using it because they don't know how, or they feel like it's not as good as it should be. But I think if you don't learn AI, it will take your job because somebody that knows AI will take your job or eat your lunch. In other words, if you're in business and you're not using AI, someone else that is and using it correctly may take your business, may take your customers, whatever the fact there. First and foremost, get to know about it, get to know more information about it, take courses if you have to, read blogs, watch videos, listen to this episode, whatever it is, just start to learn the different tools because there's Claude AI, which is like a little bit, I call it a safer tool. There's Chat GPT. Then you have, Bing's tool Copilot, which is powered by GPT. But there's different tools for different types of scenarios, especially with email marketing. There's a bunch of different tools that can help you with subject lines or body text and even image generators. I'd be careful with the image generators because they're really risky. Really what it comes down to is what you put in is what you get out. It comes down to what they call prompting. You develop your prompts or your description of what you want. You have to be very descriptive. In other words, I would not want to say, give me 5 subject lines for the widget I'm selling that is colored blue. You want to have more emphasis. Write 5 subject lines in a friendly tone, use emojis, and explain this widget and how it can affect your business or save you money in 10 words or less, right? That right there was very powerful and it gives you a much better result than just something very short. And don't forget, you can always iterate and have conversations with the AI tools. Okay, great. I forgot to add that I wanted to offer a 30% discount. It'll go back and automatically change those subject lines and add that discount in. This way you don't have to go back and either copy and paste or retype out that whole prompt. But be careful because there's a lot of risk in using AI, especially when it comes to what we call SEO or search engine marketing. When you're putting stuff on your website, say in a blog or just on your web page or in your content, if it's not valuable to your audience, the algorithms are going to hurt you. The recipient servers, or wherever your website's hosted, like Google, Bing, Yahoo, they're going to hurt you because it's not quality. Same thing with SEO, same thing with your email subscribers. If you're just copying and pasting the AI results and it's garbage, people are going to unsubscribe, mark your message as spam. Therefore, there was a recent algorithm update to Google, when you search for things, they say, yes, use AI, but offer value to your audience. In other words, make sure what you're taking from these tools is giving value to your viewer, your subscribers, your social media followers, whatever it is. Make sure that it's in your brand voice, brand tone, and it's offering value and it's not garbage, right? You can even put instructions in. I know I'm going on and I'm going to end it in 1 second here. You can say, don't start sentences with I more than 3 times in this blog post. You can give it specific instructions like that. But yeah, AI is here. It's relevant. It's growing. Just like when email marketing first came about, what is it, like 40 years ago? I think that, people were hesitant to use it. They didn't think it was powerful. Same thing here. Early adopters will reap the rewards.
Good. That's awesome. So we got Hank Hoffmeier, digital marketing infotainer, giving us some great information. Let me throw this one at you. I work with a lot of sales professionals, sales leaders, and sometimes they have a marketing department, but they want to do a little bit more. Maybe they're doing something on their own with marketing. They're struggling with this. What can they do? Let's just say somebody's got a HubSpot account, something similar. They're going to do some sequences. What are some do's and don'ts where they're going to put together, let's say, 3 to 5 emails in a sequence to reach out to different folks that they have in their network, back to your point, permission to email them, and they're going to start sending those messages. Why do salespeople suck at this so much? And what do you recommend what are a couple pitfalls to avoid and a couple things they should do?
So sales in general, you're not talking about like using AI for that, but you're talking about like saying creating a 5 email series to somebody that might be a lead.
Exactly.
Right. First and foremost, they're not getting to know each individual lead. They're trying to treat everybody in bulk. And switching to the AI part, it's funny is like some of the AI stuff I see coming out of sales is better than some of the handwritten stuff. So play around with the AI, let it help
Good.
you. Because you can go into some of these tools and you can say, hey, I have this audience or I have this person, tell a little bit about that person and say, give me some great email content to use when I follow up with this person. And it might give you recent trends in their industry. It might give you, information that you didn't know about their company or something like that, that helps you get into the inbox and then get people to open that email and offer value to them, right? We're always offering. I hate that I'm just following up, right? And I've learned a lot from
Yeah.
you over the years too, right? Yeah,
Thank
I'm
you.
just following up. I think one of the best phrases I ever heard is just saying, hey, wanted to ask you a quick question to see if it makes sense, right? Open up like that, because humans by nature want to help people. And then by saying that and then having a question, would it make sense for us to have a conversation about, hopefully you're going to get a reply to something like that. Humanize your messaging. Don't make it seem like it's a machine. Chris, I'm just following up because we had a conversation the other day about our platform and I
Yeah.
wanted to see if you were interested in moving
I'm,
forward. We
I'm
don't know
following up to
any of
see
the
if you got my
challenges,
last.
obstacles.
Yeah, I'm following up to see if you got my last 3 emails that you ignored. Yeah, those things. They're so, we all get so many of them. And sometimes I
Yep.
glance at them just to see if they're all as bad as I think they are, knowing full well we're going to delete them. So let me back up one second, Hank, because, you're so good at this. And so many of our sales professionals out there, they might be thinking, hey, I like this. I'm thinking of a bunch right now. That's great advice to say, hey, go to some kind of AI tool and say things like, hey, I want to follow up with a managing partner of a law firm and let them know about 3 changes in e-discovery or whatever it could be. How can they what would you recommend they start with? What AI tool should they go to kind of start that conversation and get to know one? Is there a free one and then graduate for a few bucks a month to another one? What would you suggest? I'm sure there's a lot, but where should the average sales professional who's maybe over 40, over 50 years old, and this is all a little foreign to them, but what could they do on their own?
When it comes to free AI tools, a lot of them are not quote unquote connected to the internet. They're trained on old models. The data is a few years old. Then you have Chat GPT 4 Plus, which is connected to the internet. In other words, I can put a link in and say, give me a summary of this article, which would help salespeople, right? A short summary. That you would need to have it look in real time at that article. And through Copilot, if you sign up a certain way, you can get that access or pay for Chat GPT Plus, which I would highly recommend. Because if you're a sales professional, you should have enough money in your budget for tools. But just make sure, make sure it's using real time information. This way, you're getting the best content back from these tools to use in a more meaningful manner in your emails and your email follow-ups.
That's great. Well, and listen, it's what we teach sales professionals is to be different, to sound different, to bring value. We had Greg Price, who from AWS and his days at Watson with IBM is all about value. Nobody understands business value selling more than Greg. And he doesn't even like the term ROI. And sometimes it's I say happy, you say smile, but he talks about make a business case. So ROI, we need to go deeper. Make a business case for whatever your pitch is. In this case, you're kind of making a pitch to say it makes sense for us to chat, to have a conversation, to take the first steps of starting this relationship. And Tom Pisello, who I'm going to have on the show in the future, I hope too, authored a book called Frugalnomics. If you teach somebody something they didn't already know about their space, That's the number one thing you can do today to enhance relationships. So everybody wants to be your friend and do more than just be a vendor, be a partner. All overused, very important terms, but the words themselves are overused. What actions are you taking? So to your point, Hank, if you're in sales and you're not learning everything about the business that you and your prospect or customers share together, you're making a mistake. And something you said earlier, your competition is just going to steal your lunch money.
Right. I always think, marketing, right? Sales and marketing.
Yeah.
You want to find people, get to know them, develop a relationship, and then have reciprocity. And you always talk about river of referrals. And I like to talk about it, especially I went to a conference when I was with iContact, and iContact is geared towards small businesses. But this conference had a lot of higher level folks and larger companies that might not be a good fit for our platform. But I knew that there might be what I call an adjacent audience. In other words, if I made an impression on the stage and gave them some takeaways for email marketing, they might have a friend or know somebody that just started a business or is looking to start a business. They may refer me to iContact. I think a lot of sales reps are always trying to close the deal with that one particular person they're talking to, but they always forget about that brand awareness and creating that lasting memory of, hey, maybe I don't need this person or this product right now, but I know somebody who does. And if you're building that relationship and sharing great information, they may refer you someone down the road. And I don't think we measure that enough. We talk about ROE, ROI, but I think it's all about just creating an awareness of you, what you do, and especially, salespeople. I see a lot more people these days doing it, becoming the thought leader, right? Where it used to be you're just a salesperson, you're not even on LinkedIn or having a presence. But more and more salespeople are getting online, creating content that helps drive conversations, that helps drive possible leads and referrals.
Yeah, great stuff. An adjacent audience, always a good term. I'm glad you worked that in there. So I think we covered some of this already, but what KPIs? I always say you want to track, measure, and monitor as few KPIs as possible, but as many as needed. For small or mid-sized sales organizations in particular, because when you get bigger, marketing has it. Some of the larger companies that I work with, we don't really touch on this. They kind of give us their messaging and we do our best with it. Smaller and mid-sized, we're kind of creating this go-to-market strategy a little bit. So when we're doing this, what are some KPIs that we should be tracking? Maybe 3 or 4 of your favorite ones, and which ones maybe aren't as relevant today as they used to be?
Right. I always like to work backwards. If you're going to create, say, a quarterly goal of bringing in $1 million in revenue, how do you get to that? Because I can mention stats from the front and then go towards the goal. But if you're a small business and you're selling something that's $5 a pop versus 500,000 a pop, your goals might be different. It's always working backwards. How do you get to that $1 million? And it could be, how much discovery and how much contract negotiations are there. So let's just talk about like a small business, like a plumber, right? They want to make $1 million. They probably need to have X amount of service calls. And if that's say that's 200 service calls in a quarter to get to close to $1 million in revenue, they need to have a certain amount of estimates and visits to get to that point. And then, okay, I need to get estimates. And on average, when I put out blog post content and use Google, et cetera, without paying for any, say, pay-per-click, I'm getting X amount of, leads that may turn into customers. So then you amplify that. So then you can say, maybe I want to add some pay-per-click and I want to drop, maybe it's $1,000 in an ad for the next month to see how that does. Then you can see how well that improves your lead acquisition. So it's always working backwards to get to that. And you can always find other channels to shore up deficiencies.
Yeah, that's good. I like that a lot. Many years ago, a couple decades ago, before we started New Velocity, I was running Slazenger Golf, and I looked back and I was working with my sales managers. And you kind of remember Steve Gale told me this, an early manager that I had. I said, "Hey, you used to be an individual contributor. You're in sales, you're in leadership now. What's a big surprise that you've had?" And he was always so modest. And he said, "It's probably better than I thought I was after going out and traveling with the rest of the sales team." And he was, by the way, but he's so modest. But what he meant by that is so many of us don't do the basic blocking and tackling well. And we're just not seeing enough people. To your point, when some of the numbers that we used, my brother who was working for us, he was leading the company in sales when I was running Slazenger, and we took a look at it, and just to use round numbers because it's over 2 decades ago, let's say you had $1 million in booked business as we were ending the year around Christmas and everything's booked for next spring when the sun comes out. And he had, again, round numbers, 100 accounts that booked that $1 million. Well, he might have seen, so you'd say, okay, there's $10,000 times the 100 accounts, there's your $1 million. And let's just say he made 10% commission. So he would make about $1,000 for every order. Well, he might have seen 200 customers. So what I try to have everybody look at is every appointment is worth $500 commission. You just don't know if they're going to buy or not. But if we look at averages, that's the case. So are you doing that? We took a look, not one other sales professional had as many booked appointments. So we started tracking how many appointments were booked. The product was good. It sold through it. A lot of things happened. They just needed to get out of their way and get out there. So I'm glad that you mentioned that as well. Sometimes, we get into the digital marketing and it's really just salespeople go out and do your job and marketing will support you, but you got to get there.
Yeah, sales is a numbers game, but you got to look at the right numbers, right?
We look at a lot of them. How about mistakes that people make when they're marketing? And again, for our audience, I'll talk about small and mid-sized companies are doing it. You mentioned some, they're trying to do this broadly. You mentioned they're not getting to know their audience a little bit, but when they're in their sequences, should they still be picking up the phone and making phone calls? What else should they do that they're getting lazy with?
Yeah, and not to beat a dead horse, but not understanding your customer avatar is a critical error. You need to know, and you may have more than one, you may have two, you may have five. Go through the exercise of learning, what do they do, where do they go, where do they shop, what kinds of clothing do they wear, everything. This way you can have conversations. Another thing is looking at your content from the marketing lens. In other words, oh my God, I'm a great marketer. This blog post I've written is the best article I've ever written in my life. But if it doesn't mean anything to your audience, it's crap, because you have to look at it through the audience. Have somebody else read it. Reach out to someone and say, hey, I'm about to publish this. What do you think about this? And they may come back and say, you know what, you're tooting your horn a little too much in this article. Maybe you want to scale it back a little bit. And then always small businesses and even larger ones, sometimes they use the wrong channels. Do you need to be on LinkedIn? Because if you're not B2B, if you're just retailer, do you need to be on LinkedIn? You could be, but is that a great focus area for you? Probably not. Make sure you're using the right channels where your audience is at, where you can get the right engagement, and make sure you're using video. You have to, in this day and age, use video. And with AI, you don't have to get in front of a camera. You can even train it to talk like you, and you can use stock video or company video. You don't even have to get on camera. But I would encourage you to get used to that. And Gary Vaynerchuk, if nobody's heard of him, you might want to go out and look at some of his books or follow him online. He's always talking about you always get better with volume. I think the famous thing he ever said is like, my first video looked like it was a hostage video, grainy, dark. You couldn't really see me. The audio was horrible. And I went back, I think it was like 3 months ago. I went back and looked at some of my earlier videos on YouTube, and I wanted to delete them, but I'm not, but I wanted to delete them because they're horrible. I didn't have the setup I have. I didn't have the confidence on being on the microphone and in front of the camera. It all comes with practice. And if everybody can see that journey, that develops trust, and in sales, that's important.
Boy, that's really good. If we get salespeople to kind of consider creating video and getting it out there is a high yield activity and goal themselves each week to do one, right? You might eventually want to do one a day or however many it is, but start somewhere. So think big, but most importantly, start small or start immediately and watch what happens with your numbers. That's really good. We were joking earlier and you said, I do a lot of weird stuff. Give me an idea what you do that's different, that's weird. And it's okay, isn't it, that some of it doesn't work, because it's probably some of your best stuff was when you had your weird hat on. Is that fair?
Right. I know when I'm doing email marketing and consulting with people with email marketing, I'm always talking about doing what's called split testing, taking two different versions of an email and testing subject line, images, content, whatever. If somebody follows me, especially on TikTok, you'll find that I'm testing different things, and you'll say, why did Hank do that? Or, hey, that's a little bit different than what he's normally done in the past. I'm actually testing against the algorithm to see if I'm getting punished or if I'm getting rewarded for what I'm doing. And then I might include that in future videos, or I may just kill it. I was talking to you earlier before we started recording around how I was mentioning my website at the end of the video, not even saying it verbally, putting it in text. I was getting dinged on TikTok for that because a lot of these platforms, including LinkedIn, they don't want you to leave the platform because then the eyeballs leave the platform and then that's less advertising for them to show. On LinkedIn and on Facebook, you'll always see if somebody shares an article, they normally now you'll notice they're putting the link in the first comment, not in the actual post, because that helps a little bit with that damage that you're getting. I would say try new things, fail fast. In other words, if it's not working, just kill it.
Fail fast.
Don't be afraid to try something new.
Okay, I like it. Fail fast is always a leader's favorite, right? Let's get on to something else that's high yield activity. Hey, talk to me about LinkedIn, Hank. And there's some different opinions out there. Let's say that you have a prospect, you identify them on LinkedIn, they're there and they're moderately active, but we don't have a relationship yet. Is it okay for me to send out an invite? Maybe there's an invitation, or maybe there's a little bit of an intro. You're given that choice, or should I not do that yet? What's your opinion on that?
I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm kind of different than most people. I'll start with first and foremost, if you're listening to this show, find me on LinkedIn and you want to connect with me, I do not accept blind invites, but you will get a reply. The TLDR of it is, hey, thanks for inviting me to connect. I have this weird rule where I don't accept blind invites. What I'd like to do is find out how we can be of use to each other, how we can provide value to each other. And if we've met in the past, please let me know because I have a bad memory. I always put that in there. And then I even say, sadly, only about 40% of people respond to this email. Let's not make this a statistic. Let's get together and get to know each other. There's been times where I get sales pitches to that. Thanks for connecting with me. Here's my sales pitch. And I didn't even connect with them yet. Then a lot of times it actually turns into great conversations where I set up a Zoom call. We get to know each other because then if I know that person just a little bit more and I see their stuff in my feed, I'm more apt to engage with it and vice versa. How we can help each other, because there'll be times where it was a salesperson trying to sell to me and we have no possible need for what they offer, but I get to know them, who their target customer is and how I might be able to refer them. And then hopefully they might ask me, how can I do the same for you? Because maybe it's somebody that's at a Fortune 100 company and it's eye contact, right? They probably don't need eye contact, but they may know somebody who does. Same thing with like kickbox as well. I love to get to know people. Always, always personalize the invite and don't make the mistake of doing it quickly on the phone, because you have to do it a little bit differently on the phone. So when you click connect, it automatically sends that. And I've done that. I'm like, oh, so I go ahead and go back and try to correct it. But yes, personalized invites. It's not a sales pitch. And if it is, you might want to just say, I work in sales here. Not sure if it's a fit, but regardless, I'd like to get to know you professionally and how I might be able to help you. Don't worry about it being a sales call. I would just make sure you get them to feel at ease about that. Oh my God, this guy wants to sell to me. This woman wants to sell to me. Don't worry about that. Get their guard down and have a conversation and build that relationship.
Marketing guru Hank Hoffmeier joining us, talking a little bit about LinkedIn here. One follow-up piece on LinkedIn. I agree with what Hank said. Let's make sure we're not selling too early, right? Educate first, sell second. We'll take care of that down the road. I look at LinkedIn as the world's largest cocktail party. You know, there's going to be 1 billion people on the platform as of this year, are the expectations. So that's where your audience is often, right? Maybe not everybody. You mentioned a good example earlier. If you're B2C as a plumber, maybe you don't need to be on it. I would argue there's still probably some reasons to do it for credibility and everything else. But I want you to have enough healthy confidence to reach out to the C-suite of your target audience and invite them to just join you. It's, and like you said, a personalized message that says, hey, I see we're both in the employee benefit space. For whatever reason we haven't connect, I thought I'd change that. Look forward to meeting you. That's it. Not, oh, and we're number one and we solved this problem or anything. None of that. You're just letting them know. And to your point, I've made that mistake. When I'm in airports and a flight gets delayed, rather than getting upset about it, you say, hey, I'm going to go jump on LinkedIn. I'm going to write a couple letters of recommendation. I'm going to go check some things. I try to be a little bit productive, right? Unless it's a late night flight and I had beers at dinner, then I'm watching Netflix. But yeah, you have to hit the little 3 dots or whatever it is on your phone to say add the message, as opposed to on the desktop that automatically gives you that option. So that is some good pro tip there from the pro himself. I'm glad you did that. But my point is, to summarize the LinkedIn, is reach out. there's probably statistically about a 30%, 33% chance they accept that invitation. But if they don't, they're never going to remember you anyhow. If you do meet them at a trade show 6 months later, hey, Hank, are you the one that tried to join me on LinkedIn? They don't remember. It's
Right.
not a problem. So we want to do this and don't focus on the 70% that ignored you. Look at it like, hey, I just built my network with my ideal client profile by 30%. That's not a bad day either.
Could I run a
Okay.
tactic by you and you let me know if it's thumbs up or thumbs down?
And by the way, for the audience, Hank and I, sometimes we like a little banter back and forth. We have different opinions. Let's hear it. Let's see what it is.
All right. Reaching out to you on LinkedIn, right? Okay. Hey, Chris, found you on LinkedIn. Thought it'd be great for us to connect. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to sell into companies like yours. I have no idea if you would be a target for me or not, and maybe use different terms there, but say, hey, I'd either pay for an hour of your time because I know your time is valuable, or buy you a lunch. What I'd like to do is have a conversation around how can I make and develop relationships with people like you in other companies to see how I can make a positive impact by offering my services, whatever it is, insert services here. Would you be open to having that conversation? In other words, I'm not trying to sell to you, but I'm trying to buy your time to let you know about what I do and see if you can give me referrals. But then if you're intrigued enough and you learn about my platform or whatever it is or service, and you are interested at that point, you might become a customer.
Yeah, I liked it. I liked the first half a lot. So right away, I'm thinking, especially with AI out there and everything else, and I'm a skeptic, right? I assume this is your angle. Somebody marketing gave you this sheet, and you're sending this out to 1,000 people. So I'm not flattered that you want my opinion. I think I'm one of many that got it. But to your point, I think this is what you educated us on earlier, Hank. How are you going to follow up? So I may ignore that first one just to see if you come back with something that looks slightly personalized, and even like, hey, your business. If you said something about the sales development or sales training industry or the leadership development industry, do something to let me know, a little bit about what I do. And
Yeah.
I feel as if I can almost see where, have you seen the trend where, hey, PS, I hope the weather's still warm and 77 in Cary today. I'm like, that is so like automated, like somebody did that, as opposed to, hey, I was on LinkedIn and I saw you went to Connecticut for a year before you graduated from Stanford, go Huskies. Something like that written that way will get my attention. And I actually advise people, did you put that in the early part of the email? Hey, Mike, listening to what you're teaching us, Hank, I might say, hey, Hank, I've got a quick question to ask, but before I do, noticed you went to Purdue, tough loss last night. Got to admit, the Huskies looked impressive. I see you follow the basketball team. Hopefully the wound's not too fresh. Something like that to back something that you taught us, humanize. These are ways that you can humanize. We connect to the bonding and the rapport. And I think it's going to be increasingly important because of the AI. AI is not that good to say those kind of things yet.
Right.
So, you can kind of separate yourself from the pack a little bit, maybe get, more introductions.
What I could do is take what I just spit out as like verbal vomit, put that into AI, have them clean it up, and then say, hey, what are some things I need to know about Chris at New Velocity, right? And hopefully it'll give me some more. And then I could do my own research, plug that in, and then curate. And I know time is money. In other words, it's going to take me time, which equals money, to develop that script. But if it's, like you said, more relevant and more valuable, I might get that reach out. Then I need to develop some more follow-ups to that as well. And don't be afraid. If that person's time is worth $200 an hour, depending on what industry you're in, it might be worth paying that person that $200 to have that discussion.
How often I've seen that happen before. How often do people do that? And for my audience that remembers, golf's a big passion of mine. I kind of grew up in the business and everything. One of the things and I didn't come up with this, somebody taught me this many years ago. Back then, and I'm going back to the early 90s, the golf professional wore many different hats. They were the buyer for the pro shop, and that's who I was selling golf equipment. But that was like a necessary evil. And today, it's often the club, the management leadership runs the club. The pro doesn't own the shop anymore. It's not his or her business.
Mm-hmm.
But back then it was. And they would be busy giving lessons because that's how they made their incremental cash, is they're out giving lessons. So I would book a lesson, John Calabria, Brooklyn Country Club in upstate New York in 1991. I booked a lesson. And again, I truly wanted the lesson. I could have gone there and just said, hey, I booked a lesson. Let's go. I want to sell you golf equipment. but I booked the lesson just to get to know him, because when he saw that I did love golf and I could hit the golf ball okay and I got a lesson, now the connection, and that's the wonderful thing of the game of golf, the connection was so strong. It was like, hey, is it cool if I follow up, maybe kind of show you what we got going on with Slazenger? Yeah, absolutely. After we just spent 45 minutes together, whatever the lesson was. So that was, very many years ago, how we would pay somebody, because it was just kind of natural. Do you think somebody's going to say, okay, send me a check for, you use $200, send me a check for $200 and I'll take your call? Does that actually happen?
Two things to unpack here. Number one, I used to do this and it doesn't really work now because everybody works from home and nobody wants to give their personal address out. But I would like mail somebody at a company a $50 Jimmy John's card and say, hey, I want to buy you lunch and have a conversation. That has worked for me. I've even sent, like, back before nut allergies were huge, and I know that's something that might come up, but I've sent a jar of nuts and say, you're nuts not to talk to me. And sometimes they work because it gets a giggle and they, thanks for the nuts. I'll really enjoy them. My kids actually enjoyed them. It's gotten responses. But I think right now everybody's worried about money, right? And what's in it for me, not my company. What's in it for me? Because have you seen house prices? Have you seen rents? Have you seen food prices, right? I think any additional dollar that somebody can get, because I'm sick of, hey, can I buy you a coffee and pick your brain? I'm getting kind of sick of that myself, because I'm giving my time away for a sip of coffee that costs $3 now. It used to cost, what, $1.50 years ago, but I can probably spend a good amount of my time if I said yes to everybody. But if they were to actually pay what I'm worth, I'm probably going to be open to doing that. And I've done it maybe twice, I think, myself, and it's worked.
So
I'm
Hank,
two
it
for
used
two
to
on that.
be, yeah, well, there you go, right? And everything works once and nothing works all the time. We have to keep that in mind. It used to be a study that we were part of, and gosh, I'm going back over 10 years ago, that it took the average prospect 8.2 touches before they would engage. And the average sales professional at the time was stopping after 1.1, essentially one. Some people do two, very few, right? So whatever that math is, everybody did one step. 10% of the sales professionals did two steps. It averaged 1.1 and they need 8.2. There was a disconnect, which is why I referenced earlier when somebody's trying to track me down. If it's something I need, yeah, of course I'll follow up, or if it's different, or back to if they were referred in, completely different than if it's a cold outreach. But I will just wait to see if they follow up again. And, good for them. And I'll let them know when I talk to them, because of what I do for a living. I'm like, hey, good for you. You got past 3 steps. Let me tell you what they are. And they appreciate the feedback. Sometimes they're unaware of it. It was their marketing team that did it. Sometimes it was their brilliance. It's okay. Great stuff here with Hank Hoffmeier, digital marketing guru, helping us out a little bit. Hank, before I let you go, tell me what you're seeing the very best salespeople do to grow their businesses. And it could be, let's think of eye contact. If you're an eye contact rep, or I haven't worked with kickbox, but if it's a kickbox rep, what are they doing to, in particular, to partner with marketing to get in front of more prospects and make more money? What are they doing? What are the very best doing?
Right. I think it all comes down to the phrase, make them better. What in them I use as in company, the individual. What is it that you or your product or service can do to help them? It's that education. That's why content marketing, that's why YouTube channels, that's why they're so popular, is because people are consuming content like no other time in history. And like you said, I think now, what is the touch points now, like 12, I think, on average, to get a response.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. And that's why content marketing can help, because it's not that cold email. Sure, you want to have those emails, but I got an email once from someone and it was trying to sell me. And then 5 minutes later, and this is the wrong use of automation. Hey, I heard Joe reached out. He told me he was trying to get in touch with you. I thought I'd follow up. I'm his manager. And I'm like, well, I didn't even get a chance to fully read that email yet. And now that was a big mistake. But also having numerous people in a company reach out to me, that's kind of feeling very much weird and scammy to me. But I think you need to connect with people on LinkedIn by doing that custom invitation, then put out content like me. And we were talking about earlier, you're talking about always creating something. It's like, I feel bad when I go a day or two without creating a video. It's like habit to me now. And it's not the fact that I'm trying to
good for you
do everything. I just feel bad because I love doing it so much. Same thing with sales. If you don't love doing sales, or you're in marketing, you don't love marketing, you're going to burn out. I used to be in staffing, and that was a company where, or an industry where you can burn out very quickly or love it. And I did it for 12 years because I just loved helping people find jobs and helping company find talent. That's what it came down to for me. In other words, if I'm joining an organization to do sales just to make $1 million, in my first 3 years, that's probably not going to work out. But if I truly believe, like at Kickbox, what we want to do is make sure that companies have valid email addresses to and ensure that their emails get into the inbox so they can grow. And in turn, we want product feedback to make our platform better. If I believe in that statement, I'll be able to effectively have conversations with people, develop relationships, which hopefully converts to sales.
Fantastic, Hank. We got a lot of great little nuggets today. It's fun. I'm going to give out some of your books that I've got when people kind of join on LinkedIn with some comments and things of that nature. It is interesting, though, to send books out, which I do quite often. It's easier anymore rather than to buy them in the office and then, have somebody in my team go grab one and go ship it out and everything. You just go on Amazon and just direct ship this darn thing, isn't it? It's the easiest thing in the world to do. But I really enjoyed your book. I give it to all my employees and I have them read it, especially because you just simplify some things that can be complex if you don't do it every day. And marketing is definitely a cousin of selling. So I know enough to be dangerous, but I certainly don't have your expertise. And I loved hearing it. I find that I actually make more mistakes when I assume that I kind of know something than if I just get out of the way. I really like a lot of things you covered today. And I'm going to go take a look. I know Lauren on my team has done some things with ChatGPT, but I'm going to look at that a little bit deeper. Some of the things that you mentioned that it's capable of, I think we're underutilizing that. So for other sales leaders that are out there, hopefully you'll do the same thing for your team. By the way, last comment is, Hank, what a cool hat. Is that, I assume you designed that knowing you, right? Hank Hoffmeier, the double H. That looks like it's very well thought out. I'm digging the hat.
Well, it's part of my logo, which I did have someone else design my name and everything, but it's my brand logo because I brand myself as the digital marketing infotainer and being a public speaker, having a website. I figured I need to have my own brand, and that aligns with Kickbox because I work at Kickbox, but I'm also my own thought leader and I'm very knowledgeable in email marketing, which is also something that's tied to Kickbox. And that's what I do.
So I'm not going to ding you like LinkedIn and other social media for giving out your website. So a lot of people are going to love all the, they probably took notes from everything you said today. What is your website? If they want to get a little bit more information, they can go find out.
So let's do a different spin on it. I won't give the URL, but go search Google for Hank Hoffmeier. I have the best SEO for my name. I take up about 2 or 3 pages of Google's
Even
rankings,
better.
and you'll find me on social. You'll find me my website, my podcast. And again, if you're going to connect with me on LinkedIn, that better be a personalized invite. And hopefully you'll get a response and we'll have a conversation and find out how we can make each other's days better.
I listened to you on the CD podcast. So boom, we're all here. Hank, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
You got it.